And with that comes this. You suddenly have men like Darwin, etc. And suddenly you have something called secular humanism. God is locked out of the equation. Suddenly God is just some random thought that religious people have, but he's not real. He's a crutch for some that need him. And suddenly God, who was the center of thought, who was the center of existence for 1700 years in the West, is gone. He's eradicated from the situation. There's life, and there's those people who think about God. And then finally, you get a whole lifestyle. What you have is you have a philosophy, and then you have a mindset, and those are intertwined. And finally, you have a lifestyle called materialism. Because if God doesn't exist, the only thing that's important is what? What you can touch, feel, and have. And I may be talking above some of us here today, but what I'm trying to say is this. The world has shifted drastically, and we now live in a culture where you are defined by your possessions. You're defined by your status symbols because we're in a materialistic culture. So that's what's happened sociologically, okay? Which means the need for the church, because the church is about God, well, it's just far less. It's eradicated. But then there's been a theological shift, and it's to do more with the church and God. And that's this. So we've got a culture shift. And then secondly, a dated church. One author summed it up brilliantly. I love what this man said. He's a Christian author, so he's allowed to have a bit of a go. If you want to know what a church looks like in the 1950s, simple. Walk into one. If you want to know what a church looked like in the 1950s, just walk into one today. You'll get that as you think about it. I'll read you this quote, okay, by another fantastic author, Christian guy. I'm going to read this quote to you. This is all under this thought of the culture has shifted and the church is dated. Listen to this. As the TV revolution not only continues to unfold but accelerates, the tragic truth in many churches is that with every passing year, God and the gospel are more firmly gagged and bound. Not by persecutors of the faith. It's not like other people are going, you can't speak about God. No, but by the failure of the church to adapt to a whole new world of communication. When I studied English literature at a university, I had to spend time learning Anglo-Saxon, the ancient language from which English eventually grew. To distribute leaflets in London today written in Anglo-Saxon or Latin would be completely futile. We would be trying to communicate in a dead language. The church has failed to adapt. The church has failed to move with the times. Listen to this as this man speaks again. Listen to what he says. In most churches, in most churches, the mechanisms of change and adaptability were established in an age when the culture changed much more slowly. Many churches now view change like chemotherapy. We can cope with a limited dosage so long as we're persuaded it is absolutely necessary. As soon as possible, we want to settle back into our cold, accustomed ways. We want to do church the way it was done so many years ago when it was really, really comfortable. And what's happened is this. Basically, the whole world jumped on a roller coaster of change, and the church never got a ticket. Hear me again. The whole world has jumped on a roller coaster of change, and the church is still standing by without a ticket. We got left behind. So I'll make this statement. We at X1, we as a church can do very, very little with regards to the first reason. We can't shape the way people think. Not from top down. We have an idea about what we can do. But we have every single opportunity to affect the second reason. We can do something about a dated church. We can make it something different so that it actually adapts to and speaks to culture as it is today. I'll tell you why and how in a moment. But first I want to take us back 2,000 years for some divine insight. If you turn to Acts chapter 17, if some of you have a Bible, I understand that some of you won't. But I want to read something that was about 1900 years ago that I think speaks quite wonderfully into our situation today. Acts chapter 17, verse 16. While Paul was waiting for them in Athens, He was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace, among the people, day by day with those who happened to be there. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to dispute with him. Some of them asked, "What is this babbler trying to say?" That's a label I would be labeled with today. It's true. What is this babbler trying to do in a cinema every Sunday? Fortunately, Paul wore the same label, so I'm in good company. Some of them asked, he seems to be advocating foreign gods. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. Then they took him and brought him to a meeting of the Areopagus, where they said to him, "May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? You are bringing some strange ideas to our ears." The good news of Jesus is strange ideas to people's ears today, because the church hasn't spoken for about 50 years, really. And so when we bring it back out and we try and bring it into public space, whoa, this is strange ideas. And we want to know what they mean. All the Athenians and foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. Loose women, ITV. That's what that is. Without having a real dig. I'm not even trying to have a real dig, but that's what it is. Gossiping and talking about the latest ideas. And most of them know jack squat. But we listen anyway. And for some reason today, celebrities seem to know far more than normal people. So we listen to what they have to say. And most of them are as uneducated. Paul then stood up, I'll leave it there, in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, "Men of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around, I looked carefully at your objects of worship. I even found an altar with this inscription, 'To an unknown God.' Now what you worship is something something unknown. I am going to proclaim to you. From one man, the God who made the world and everything in it, he made every nation of men that they should inhabit the whole earth. God did this so that men would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us." Why have I taken us back 2,000 years? Why have I taken us back to a story in the Bible about a man called Paul who walks into the city of Athens, which is just absolutely saturated with multiple philosophies and multiple religions? Well, primarily because I believe, and one of our core values as a church is that this is absolute truth. I may be a fool for believing that, but it seems to have a lot more insight and wisdom than anything else that's available out there to read. And I believe God wrote this through authors, and it is my source of strength and my source of knowledge. It is absolute truth. Secondly, I feel first century Athens was remarkably similar to 21st century Watford or London or the United Kingdom. There's a very similar current to our current cultural milieu. And you may ask how. Simple. As in that passage, spirituality today is the order of the day. You can go anywhere. There are multiple outlets for people to express their spirituality. Spirituality is in. Younger people, younger than myself, they're having a taste of everything. Just some way to connect with something far greater than just this reality. But the Christian faith isn't. Spirituality, yes. Christianity, no. I'd also say this. Our culture is saturated with idols. They've changed their shape, so they're no longer little temple goddesses of Diana or Artemis like they were in first century. But you know what they are now? They're celebrities that speak through that little temple. 42 inches now, maybe 50, well, however big you want it. And those are our idols today. They speak. They are whom we worship. Wealth, celebrities. We celebrate youth. You know, once you're over 30 like me, you're out of it. You're no longer part of the equation, Simon. The cool people, the MTV generation, are younger than you. We worship that. We worship youth. We worship appearance. That's why we hack into our bodies to make us look more like younger people. The idols have changed, but the problem of idolatry is still rampant in our culture. We worship stuff. We are owned by our stuff. How did that turn around? That stuff now owns us. We were supposed to own it.